Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for June 2nd. June 2nd is the 153rd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 154th in leap years, with 212 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is profligate. Profligate is usually an adjective, occasionally used as a noun. As an adjective, profligate means wildly extravagant, completely given up to dissipation and licentiousness, shamelessly immoral. Profligate describes someone who is extremely wasteful or recklessly extravagant in their spending, actions, or behavior. To call someone or to be called profligate is certainly not a compliment, as it implies a lack of self-control or responsibility. Profligate may occasionally also be used as a noun, where it means a person who is wildly extravagant and usually grossly self-indulgent. The word profligate evolves to us from Latin. First documented use of the word profligate as an adjective is in 1617 and in 1709 as a noun. Profligate. The word profligate was recommended by one of my viewers, and if you have a word you'd like us to explore, drop it down in the comments, and if I can find it in the dictionary, and it's not nasty, I'll talk about it. Speaking of profligate, I'll mention that last year we talked about Marquis de Sade, quite the profligate. We're not going to belabor that again, but if you'd like to see what I had to say about him, I'll include a link to last year's episode. And with that, this is the birthday of English author and poet Thomas Hardy, born June 2nd, 1840. His dad was a stonemason, and his mom had had some education and was well read, and she taught him at home until he was able to go to school when he was 8 years old. He was able to continue that part of his education until he was about 16 or so. His folks couldn't afford to send him to college, though, so he became an apprentice for a local architect. He moved to London when he was 22, attended King's College, and went to work as an assistant architect there in London, won prizes for his architectural work. Thomas Hardy didn't enjoy living and working in London, though, as he was very aware of class distinctions and had some idea that he might be considered socially inferior. He became interested in social reform and some of the works of those writers of the day. When he was 27, he finished his first novel, titled The Poor Man and the Lady. Many modern writers know about rejection letters, and this one had been rejected at least 5 times. After that, he showed it to another writer friend who told him that the story was politically controversial and could hamper his ability to get anything published in the future, so he abandoned that project. The original manuscript of The Poor Man and the Lady has been lost, but we know that he used some of those ideas and components of that novel in later works. By the time he was 30, he had moved back to Dorset and decided to dedicate himself to writing. He got married when he was 34, but the couple became estranged. Interestingly, even though they were estranged for many years, it hit him really hard when she died in 1912, when he was 72. 2 years after that, in 1914, he married his secretary, who was 39 years his junior, but he had trouble overcoming his preoccupation with his first wife's death. His therapy for that was to write poetry. Now, I've gotten caught up in this story, but there is one more thing that I want to tell you about it, and that is that if his name seemed familiar when you heard it, Thomas Hardy, one of the novels he wrote was Far from the Madding Crowd. This was his 4th novel, and it was published in 1874. It's madding, by the way, not maddening, as I thought when I was younger. Madding means frenzied. It's a story about a guy who has a female friend. They're good friends. He discovers he has the sweets for her, but she doesn't like him like that. Lots of other stuff happens, and spoiler alert, he does end up with her in the end, eventually. Far from the Madding Crowd has been adapted to stage plays and movies, radio drama, comics, even anime, as well as several musical groups referencing the work in some way or another. Thomas Hardy wrote at least 18 novels, somewhere between 50 and 60 short story collections, and I counted 15 poetry collections. Mr. Hardy developed a case of pleurisy and died in January of 1928 when he was 87. But wait, there's more. He had specified that he wanted to be buried with his first wife, and his friends and family agreed. But the executor of his estate insisted that he be buried in Westminster Abbey's famous Poets' Corner, so they compromised. His heart was buried with his first wife, and his ashes in Poets' Corner. By the way, his estate at the time of his death was the then equivalent of over 6 million British pounds in today's money, adjusted for inflation, which would be over 8 million American dollars. So I'd say he was a successful writer. Thomas Hardy. Now that was quite a bit of story. So before we get on with the song of the day, let me say that I'll include a link to a previous episode for June 2 in case you'd like to see what other things that I talked about in a previous episode for this date. Today's song is My Love by Paul McCartney and Wings. Written as a love song to wife and Wings bandmate Linda, My Love was released as a lead single from Wings' album Red Rose Speedway. They did a few things differently in this song, such as a guitar solo by Henry McCullough. Some critics hated My Love, saying it was syrupy and sentimental. Others loved it, calling it a luscious ballad, suggesting its sentiment and crooning would soon make it a classic. I'd have to say that enough critics and fans agreed with the more positive opinions based on the fact that My Love has been covered by many artists, including such greats as Tony Bennett, Nancy Wilson, Brenda Lee, Andy Williams, and Harry Connick Jr., and the reason we're even talking about it today, that My Love hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on June 2nd, 1973, for the first 4 weeks. My Love by Paul McCartney and Wings, link in the description. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoyed this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That description lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page that's called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, BitChute, and Getter. All those links in the description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Do not disturb.
Okay, I turned Do Not Disturb on.
Good job. Third time better be a charm. There's no thee there. One more time. Attracting. Just read the whole thing over. Are you making some sound? Get on out of here. And we're gonna edit that out. Don't alienate people who can be helpful to you. Flinging happiness all over the place. Alrighty. Back to work. I think we got it this time.